Thank you, Madam President. Formalities first, of course. We welcome the Governor of the State of California to our chambers. If he's not here yet, I suspect we'll be aware of it when he is in the room. But probably equally, if not more important, I want to welcome Bud and Arlene Steinberg, Darrell Steinberg's parents, wife Julie, son Ari. And for those who are wondering, it's not a coincidence that all 5 of those people are here in the room at the same time. We're about to pay tribute to our dear friend and leader for the past 6 years, Darrell Steinberg, and it's my great honor to. The Governor has arrived. Governor, I'm glad you found a seat because I was going to offer you mine.
Yeah, we might want to sit.
So for purposes of full disclosure, as I kick this off, my great fortune of my service here in the Senate these past 6 years is that they have been under the leadership of my good friend Darrell Steinberg, and in every way, that fact has colored my experience here in an extraordinarily positive way. Darrell, I hope it's been good for you. It's been good for me. We first met upon my victory in my Democratic Assembly race, first Assembly race back in 2002, and it was a luncheon put together by some friends of ours from San Francisco, Darrell's hometown, and I immediately sensed not only a camaraderie, but a real brotherhood was there. And as the years unfolded, we served 2 years together in the Assembly until Darrell's term ended in 2004. And during those 2 years, and I'm a keen observer and learn through observation, from watching Darrell legislate among the best, brightest, and most accomplished, and also probably with the weirdest sense of humor of anyone who's ever walked these halls. And at that point, of course, there was a 2-year lapse before Darrell could run for state senate. I quickly pounced on his chief of staff, Kathy Dressler, who was looking for a couple years' employment, and it was our office's good fortune that Kathy joined us as our legislative director for 2 years. So the bonds just continued to grow between Darrell and his office and mine. Arriving in the Senate in 2009, of course, the deficit that we faced at that time, $42 billion, certainly put the deficit of 2003 when I arrived in the Assembly to shame, only $17 billion. And it was truly a marvel just to watch Senator Steinberg in his new role as leader of this House navigate what were, for those of us who weren't here, and for even those of us who were, because memories do fade, the severity of the crisis. We were on our knees if we didn't act, and keep in mind about everything that we needed to do at that point required a 2/3 majority vote. If we did not act, tens of billions of dollars of state construction projects would come to a halt. Thousands upon thousands of workers would find themselves out of jobs at a time when the private sector was falling even faster than the state. They were treacherous times, and it was clearly a challenge for all of us individually and collectively as elected members of the Senate, but also as, again, an observer of someone who had taken on, by his own choice and with the support of the House, the leadership the one who had to make the decisions. And with all due respect, a governor who barely had a clue as to how we were going to move forward and save this state. I can tell you from my observation, there was one person in this building who was able to assess the damage, determine what needed to be done, and take the necessary steps to lead us out of that darkness. And he did. About a year and a half later, I was asked to chair the Budget Committee, which appeared daunting and if a bit intimidating at the time. My predecessor having probably more knowledge of the budget than anyone who had held that position for a long time, and knowing there were big shoes to fill. But so glad that I did. It's been the best job I've had my 12 years here in the Senate. But again, gave me additional opportunity to work side by side with Darrell Steinberg and to see how he approaches challenges and whatever the issue may be, looking at it, again, imagining all the possible solutions, and then coming up oftentimes, not unlike Solomon, with a very balanced and always determined decision to get the job done, that we're here for a purpose, and that is to get it done. What I think makes Darrell uncommon, if not unique, among leaders, and we who have served here for a while have witnessed and worked with any variety, but there are always, I think we can acknowledge, multiple agendas going on. And it's sometimes difficult to really understand, if not grasp, all of the variety of things that may be leading a decision by the pro tem. And what makes Darrell so unique is that there's exactly one agenda, and that is the people of the state of California. And I have been able to trust in that through all of these 6 years. And I think it must be said that through all of these challenges, and they have been many, and I'll share a few with them and with you in a moment, there has not been one vote where Darrell did not find the 21st or the 27th as needed. Never did something he set out to do fail. The list is long, so I need a little bit of visual aid here. Of course, placing you before the voters, this goes all the way back to 2004, but probably one of the crowning achievements of a very long list of achievements would be the passage of Prop 63, funding for mental health services in California, now amounting to well over $1 billion annually for that purpose. Overall planning laws in California, SB 375, known just about by everybody by its Senate bill number, if not for the understanding of how it will shape our state's future growth. Autism insurance mandate, mandating early care for thousands of kids with autism. That was a big victory. Of course, our water bonds, providing pre-kindergarten for all low-income kids in California, finding a permanent funding source for transit and housing so that the vision of SB 375 could be implemented. $500 million invested in career technical education, criminal justice reforms to finally lower our state's recidivism rate, restoration of basic dental benefits for 80,000 Californians. Of course, our public employee pension reform work of a couple years ago, which will save California taxpayers billions of dollars, and which our governor acknowledged was the most significant pension reform in a generation. And then finding that 21st vote for high-speed rail and supporting transit infrastructure so that we can create jobs and keep our economy moving. The list is much longer than that, but not surprisingly, as a result of any one, if not all, of these accomplishments, earning the Pulitzer Prize of Public Service, the Kennedy Profile and Courage Award in 2010 for saving the state from its own demise in 2009. And a couple years later, recognized by the Wall Street Journal as one to watch across the entire country in 2013. Clearly a rare individual. So, not unlike one of his personal heroes, yes, a Los Angeles Dodger, Senator Hernandez, Sandy Koufax, leaving at the top of his talents, leaving us at the top of his talents in his moment of greatest accomplishments. But unlike Sandy Koufax, Darrell Steinberg will be back. Darrell, personally, I will forever be appreciative of the experience you afforded me here, in addition to all that you've done for the state of California. I couldn't have asked for a better 6 years here in the Senate. Thank you very much.
Senators, our governor honor our pro tem Steinberg at this time with his tribute.
Thank you. Never having spoken from this podium before, I may not wish to give it up. It brings back memories from my first time as governor when I was actually was in the temporary whatever you call them, classrooms, chambers that were built with temporary during the restoration. Anyway, I was in the back lobbying, I don't know, some damn bill or another, and the pro tem, David Roberti, actually kicked me out. And your marshals, or whatever you call these deputies, actually approached me, and I had to turn tail and run. So to avoid the indignity of, anyway. So those were former times. So I wanted to contrast that with the spirit of cooperation and collaboration. And working with you, Darrell, has been fun, it's been exciting, incredibly knowledgeable, knows stuff about the last water bond and knows about the school stuff. And, you know, we don't always see things exactly the same. Darrell has incredible faith in the power of this government to do almost anything. I'm a little more skeptical. So I'd like to kind of keep a little restraint there. And by the way, I do want to say something to our Republican colleagues. Voting, everybody voting on that water bond, because the water bond, it's controversial. It's not a little motherhood kind of deal. It's a big, important measure. And for having this House vote with no dissenting votes, I think that is, I mean, it's a testament to everybody. Darrell, you as leader, but the Republicans, and even that fellow from, I mean, it's great. I just want to thank you about it. Because we look around and we see how, you know, they look in Washington. If you look at that Real Clear Politics poll, always at the bottom they say, Congress, favorable, unfavorable. I've been watching that number. It doesn't go above 13. So you're doing a hell of a job. You're up around 40 or something. Or it's gone up. So, I mean, you know, that's progress. But I think whenever we can collaborate, I just want to say that is really important. It's important what we do, but it's also important the feeling and the message that is communicated. And this, you've got all this. This is a house of conflict, but it's also a house of collaboration. And Darrell, you've been leading that show for a long time. And we've had a lot of negotiations, and you've been pretty flexible, I got to say that. And you want to have these ideas about education and mental health and prison reform. And you know, sometimes I think you have more ideas than I do. And I think you do. They're just a little different. But it's a pleasure to be with somebody who has such a faith in the process. And as I was sitting here looking at this, I've never kind of looked at it and seen the intimacy with which you have to meet up with each other every day. It's very different than being an executive, by the way. I get to just spend a lot of time by myself. I can shut the door. I don't have to talk to people. I don't have to say nice things. I can. So this is an incredible part of representative government. And when you look at what's going on in the world, representative government isn't doing that well in many places, even in our own country. So this has been a very good period. I mean, we came through some tough times, and we're in, I think, a moment, hopefully a long moment, when things are pretty good. And these negotiations between the Senate and the Assembly, it's kind of mysterious. In some ways, it's very helpful when you fight with the Assembly, because then I can kind of maneuver in between. But you've been able to get it done. Even things that yesterday, the day before, we're getting a lot of compromises. And so that's all I got to say. It's great. I like this career education. I think the mental health, what we're trying to do in prisons, and then recent stuff on water and all the rest. We're doing a lot of good stuff. It's not perfect. And I know the Republicans are going to look at it one way, Democrats look at it another. But I think the people of California have a lot to be proud of. And this is a house of history and spirit, but it's also the house that gets stuff done and resolves these disputes. We are different, and that's what a lot of people don't get. People feel they come up here and they're right. Well, everybody thinks they're right, but they all disagree. And so molding that into legislation and the budget and getting things done. It takes a skill, and Darrell, I think you've demonstrated that skill in a very extraordinary way, because you first of all have to negotiate, and you got to placate, but you have to keep the dream and the vision. And Darrell, you've been able to do that. In fact, you got more damn vision than anyone else I've ever met. Because those visions have to be paid for. That's what Anyway. It's been great working with you, and wherever you go, I'll be following you a few years later. That's all. Thanks.
Speaker Atkins will be delivering her tribute to honor the pro tem at this time.
Well, thank you, Senator. What an honor it is to have the opportunity to say a few words about your President pro tem, Darrell Steinberg. And I can't believe I have to follow the governor. Who knew he had such a sense of humor? But I won't make it long, because I've left the Speaker Emeritus presiding, and I'm a little nervous about that. So I want to, of course, you know, we did it because he can either be on the floor causing trouble. He can only say less when he's up on the dais. So I thought, but at any rate, it's a wonderful thing that the governor would take the time today to pay tribute to you and, of course, to the Speaker Emeritus over there. And I wanted to take the opportunity to come over and to thank you for so many things. Our relationship goes back well before I arrived in the Assembly. And in fact, you were one of my early supporters as a local elected official in San Diego. And it was a great honor to sit on SANDAG, our municipal planning organization, to be able to take a lead and try to move people in my region to support SB 375, which I think is a signature piece of legislation that has really enhanced our state. And when the governor talked about vision, that was incredible vision. And what an honor it has been to serve these last several years and to watch you and certainly my mentor, Chris Kehoe, who is one of your biggest fans, to watch you in action, and then to have the opportunity to become Speaker of the Assembly, and to have the incredible opportunity to work with you on this last budget, the water bond, a number of pieces of legislation that we both care about, and to get the opportunity to sit with you as you helped me understand the inner workings of the mind of Governor Brown. So I want to thank you for that. What you've done for this institution, the Assembly and the Senate, will be long-lasting, and it has been my privilege for this short period of time to be able to serve as Speaker of the Assembly, to work with the pro tem in the Senate, the President pro tem, to get good things done for all of California. And Darrell, I would be remiss if I did not send to you from my spouse, Jennifer, who you are her #1 legislator. She thinks everything you do is great. And I will just leave you with a funny story, which I was on the phone. She is, incredibly smart, those of you that know her. And I was running a bill idea past her. And it turns out it was a really bad idea. And she had had it because it was the demise of redevelopment, which she thought was a very bad idea, as many of us did. And so I didn't realize how bad this was. And she said, that is a really bad idea. You've killed redevelopment. You've blah, blah, blah. And you better support SB 1, too. And she hung up on me. She has never hung up on me. And I thought, okay, then. I have been given my direction to support Steinberg's SB 1, and I will not be able to come home if we don't somehow manage to do that. So on behalf of Jennifer and I and a grateful Assembly House, I want to say congratulations for your tenure, the legacy that you have left. You will leave here with your head held high for what you have been able to accomplish for the state of California. Thank you, Darrell.
Senators, our pro tem-elect, Senator De Leon, would like to give his tribute now.
Thank you very much, Madam President, as well as colleagues and guests and staff members here today. Our pro tem, Darrell Steinberg, embodies the true meaning of a public servant. On a daily basis, Darrell is someone who seeks to make a difference, to help the people who are least likely to help themselves. Bud and Arlene Steinberg must be recognized for raising a true mensch, and Darrell Steinberg. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for raising a truly great human being. Now, Darrell was raised with very strong Jewish values. He embodies the very essence of the cornerstone of Jewish teaching, tikkun olam. Tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is the concept that humanity's shared responsibility is to heal, is to repair, and to transform the world. To repair the world through community service and good deeds. Tikkun olam is how Darrell manifests his Jewish identity through his public service. Now, this started at a very, very early age and continues today. Back in Millbrae, a little south of San Francisco, in the 3rd grade, he was the recipient of the Good Citizenship Award. At Capuchino's High School, he served in student government. When he sees an injustice, he is the first person to speak up. As a law student here at UC Davis, his advocacy ensured that the moot courtroom was made accessible to wheelchairs. He's an amazing leader, a very rare quality, as Senator Mark Leno just articulated a few moments ago. He is someone that can take an idea from concept to fruition. and there's always follow through. As a young leader in Sacramento, one of Daryl's earliest leadership roles was chair of the Jewish Community Relations Council. And there he organized a trip to the former Soviet Union with a former legislator, now Judge Lode Connolly. And at that time, Daryl met his incredible and very beautiful and very distinguished wife, Julie Steinberg. Now, he was at the Tahoe Park Neighborhood Association. He was, I should say, the Tahoe Park Neighborhood Association president. And he can't stand by when work needs to be done. He's always volunteering for his community, always the public servant. And as we know, Julie is the cantor at the synagogue at Temple down here in Land Park, the Ninth Temple, which I know the rabbi has complained quite incessantly that when Daryl Steinberg shows up, instead of praying and doing what he needs to do, he's always socializing all the time as he's trying to collect votes among the parishioners, at the temple. So when Daryl ran for the assembly for the very first time back in 1998, he told his political advisor that he wanted to make community mental health his very top priority. And he was told, Daryl, it's a bad idea. Now, the same thing happened when he pursued Proposition 63, the Mental Health Services Act, for the November 2014, or I should say 2004, ballot. It started with an idea: raise the income tax on the wealthiest of Californians and use the revenue to expand community mental health services. Again, he was told by his political advisors, this is not a winning issue. And what did Daryl do? How did Daryl respond? In both cases, he followed his heart. He followed his passion. He did what he believed was right, even when it was not popular. And in both of these cases, he preserved and he won. He persevered, and on Prop 63 victory, our pro tem accomplished what so many have failed to do, and so many have tried. To put this in context, and I wish Governor Jerry Brown was here, since 1992, there have been 23 attempts to raise revenue at the ballot box. Now, we're California. We are left-leaning California. We are a democratic state. But contrary to popular belief and myth, the last 23 years, there have only been 3 ballot initiatives that raised revenue at the ballot box. Back in 1992, then Republican Governor Pete Wilson passed 174, a sales tax increase for public safety. Then a gentleman who we know by the name of Meathead, and All in the Family, Rob Reiner, passed a tobacco tax. We've seen so many revenue enhancement measures fail at the ballot box, whether it's oil severance tax, whether it's split property roll tax, another version of tobacco tax, another personal income tax. But it was Daryl Steinberg in 2004 with Prop 63, when everyone thought, quote unquote, that he was crazy because he wanted to raise taxes on the wealthiest of Californians, the millionaire's tax, so he can provide mental health services to those who need it the most. Up to then, Daryl, Pete Wilson, and Rob Reiner, the only 3 individuals in the last 2 decades to actually pass revenue enhancement at the ballot box. And he was told he couldn't do it. And he was told, quote unquote, ironically speaking, pun intended, that he was crazy, that he wanted to help those who were mentally ill and who needed the services. And thanks to you, we have these services, my friend. Thanks to you. Thanks to you, those who have mental health challenges, regardless of who they are and where they come from, have a fusion of resources because of Prop 63. Now, his service heart, his core passion to help those who need it most made the budget situation in 2008 as well as 2009 incredibly painful for him. He had to make cuts that were the antithesis of what brought him to public services. And throughout the years, Daryl was a stronghold of making sure whatever damage had to be done was done as minimal as possible. Without question, the deck of cards that Daryl received because the world financial meltdown globally and had such an adverse impact on everyday Californians. I think one can characterize Daryl's pro-tempship during a good chunk of those years as a wartime president of the California State Senate, doing everything possible with such limited resources to save those who need saving, those who are marginalized in the state, in our own communities. And that was Daryl, when some folks wanted to bring a hatchet, a meat cleaver to the budget, he did everything possible with precision and with a surgical hand to try to save as much as he can possible. And when this is all over, and we characterize and we go through the lore of all the pro tems, John Burton did never face what you faced as a pro tem. Don Parada never faced what you faced as a pro tem. Bill Lockyer never faced what you faced as a pro tem, nor did David Birdie, nor anyone preceding those individuals. You truly came in the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, and you held it together. You held the caucus together. And that's a credible testament to your leadership, but your core values, tikkun olam, service to those throughout the world in our own community. Now, in 2009, during the budget negotiations, they all stayed up. Many folks were here, stayed up to 2, 3 in the morning, all night-long sessions. And when the sun came up, Daryl went home and he took a jog. He took a jog and then promptly returned to the Capitol. A constituent of Daryl saw him in the neighborhood running, and he wrote a letter to the Sacramento Bee saying that Steinberg was slacking off and should be here working on the budget. And this is a true story. 2, 3 in the morning, takes a jog, goes home, comes back to work, and sees a letter in the editorial pages that Steinberg is a big slacker. He should be in the Capitol doing his job. Now that the economy has improved quite dramatically, Daryl has worked to restore as many services as possible. And I can't imagine a better leader to get us through a Great Depression. Now, he has a beautiful wife and Julie, 2 great kids, Ari, Jordana, 2 great parents, Arlene and Bud Steinberg. We went to Mexico together for the first time a couple years ago. We went to the Museum of Tolerance in Mexico City. And seeing Daryl in Mexico City, along with our Republican leader, Bob Huff, and a few of other of our colleagues here today, was magical. To engage with the elected officials, to engage with the policymakers in Mexico City, to understand how intricately linked we are with our neighbor to the south, gave, I believe, Daryl major ideas for his political agenda. He just came back, as we know, from El Salvador. He led the trip to El Salvador, the legislative trip. And coming back, it was through his initiative, how do we deal with the young children, the unaccompanied minors who have crossed this border seeking refuge. There's diverse opinions on this issue across the board, and we respect everyone's opinion. But it was through his initiative, meeting with the president of El Salvador, meeting with the secretaries of the cabinet, meeting with the U.S. ambassador. And while in El Salvador, just a few months ago, with our majority leader, Ellen Corbett, you negotiated a deal. You did what the State Department could not do in Washington, D.C. You did what the Secretary of the State could not do. You did what the U.S. ambassador could not do. You helped negotiate with the president $250 million that were frozen in an account from the State Department to the government of El Salvador because the Salvadoran government didn't want to do a few things politically. But after long hours of discussing the issue and dealing with the poverty and the plight of these young children, the following day, you convinced them to do the right thing. And they passed it in Congress so they could receive those dollars. And it was you, Daryl. You, Daryl, who did that. No limelight, no media, no help from counselors from the State Department. It was your own initiative, tikkun olam. You doing what you need to do because you know it's the right thing to do. And that's an amazing testament to who you are as an individual, Daryl. Now, Daryl was a great partner to me on retirement security, SB 1234. He was my joint author. You also were a great partner for me on Prop 39 on single sales factor when we dealt with it here together in the legislative branch, but as well when we went to the ballot initiative. You always said to me, go for it, Kevin. You always gave me political space. You always gave me, always kudos. You always lifted me up. You always handed the ball all the time. You always shared. That always stayed with me. And one thing then, and I think I've mentioned on a few occasions, and one of the most difficult times politically, not personally, politically, the day, obviously, when I was not the Speaker of the California State Assembly. It was December 10th on my birthday, Democratic Caucus, Stanford Mansion, and there was a vote. Then after the vote, I came to my office. I walked to my office by myself, because at that time, when you're not the leader, no one wants to be around you. You know, you're as toxic as can be, and no one wants to be, everyone wants to get as far away as possible. So I walked over from the Stanford Mansion by myself to my office on the second floor, the Appropriations Office of the Assembly. And I just went to my office, and I just sort of sat there all by myself, and actually was doing nothing because nobody was calling me at all whatsoever. And it was like that. Then all of a sudden, my assistant came into the office and says, the President Pro Tem, Darrell Steinberg, is in the lobby and would like to talk to you. And first I thought that was the rarest thing. Well, what's a pro tem doing on the assembly side, let alone an assembly member's office? And I was stunned, I was surprised, but I was curious also too. And I said, absolutely, please send him in. And I had no idea why you were there. And Darrell Steinberg walked into my office, and with open arms, he said, I want to know how you're doing. How are you feeling? No, I can tell you, Kevin, that you're a good man. And I can tell you that I'd love to welcome you with open arms in the California State Senate. And be mindful about one thing. I had very limited knowledge of the culture, the history, the institution, the values of this great Senate body. Limited, other than the times when I'd come here, present a bill like everyone else, come here and cajole and try to persuade other folks to support my bills that were stuck on the Senate floor. Short of that, no experience or exposure to the Senate. And my mindset was not to run for the Senate. And it was Darrell Steinberg. It was Darrell Steinberg who convinced me. It was Darrell Steinberg who opened up his arms. It was Darrell Steinberg who accepted me. And I will never forget that, Darrell, because you are a true mensch. You are un hermano. You are a brother. You lend yourself to those who historically, again, who need the lending from a brother like you. You are an individual who elevates, as we've talked about on numerous occasions. Don't put other folks down. We elevate everyone together. We make everyone succeed. That's who you are, Darrell. And you're the true embodiment of the spirit of the Senate, but not just beyond the Senate. Because our relationship, as we all know, among colleagues, among friends, relationships, bonds can be quite transactional. But a friendship with Darrell Steinberg transcends and transforms. It goes beyond the immediate short and midterm gratification and transaction that one needs and wants or whatever their interest is, short, mid, or long term. Darrell's friendship is a bond that transcends the Senate and goes beyond this beautiful Capitol. That's what true friendship is. That's what a true bond is. That's what a true mensch is. That's what a true hermano is. I've become a better person because of you, Darrell. I think I've become a better legislator, policy-wise, because of you. I owe you that direct influence on me, just being around you, engaging you, watching you, asking questions, receiving constructive input from you in a way that's always done in a very holistic, positive way, lifting folks up always. That's who you've been. I have been truly honored, truly honored to have the opportunity to be your friend, and I will forever, always be indebted to you. This Senate will always forever be indebted to you, the state of California, and the people of California, Latino, African American, white, black, Jewish, non-Jewish, Catholics, everyone. will always be indebted to you for how you fought for them, how you fought for their values, how you championed them when they had no champion. No bigger champion than Daryl Steinberg. Mi hermano, gracias. Un abrazo muy fuerte. Thank you.
And now, Republican Party Leader Senator Huff would like to give his tribute.
Thank you, Madam President. I understand our comments are supposed to be positive here today, so I'll be brief. Senator Leno talked about you being on the one-to-watch list. By the way, you've been on our watch list for some time, just so you fully appreciate that. But, you know, a lot has been talked about the legacy of Daryl, and certainly his advocacy for the mentally ill stands at the very top. Now, some would say that was self-serving, but I would never make that accusation. I know it is a serious issue. You know, I appreciate Daryl's sense of humor, and I know he can take anything I'm going to say. The worst of it's over. But humor is a lubricant that helps us do our job a lot better around here, and he wields it very effectively and effusively. And sometimes I'm angry, and he'll drop a little joke, and you know, you just can't help but laugh. The governor's that way too. It helps around here, folks. If you don't have it, cultivate it. You know, we have had the opportunity to travel together. Certainly taking the Senate to Long Beach to study linked learning was a real positive. That was taking a personal vision he had, sharing it with the rest of us to come up with some joint policy that was funded in the budget. And certainly that is the mark of a great leader who can not just have a vision, but to share it and implement it. And I appreciate that. You've also been you have valued the institution, and you think about each of us getting elected to our own respective districts where we represent almost 1 million people. And as crazy as we are, there's people that believe we will best represent their district, and you've appreciated that and given us our victories. In that sense, you've been fair. And for those of us that you know, don't always agree with you, we appreciate that you allow us some victories so that we can take something back to our districts who want us to be victorious and have that voice at the table. I remember one time I was having an issue with another legislator over something, and Daryl kind of got wind of that, and as the volume started to escalate, he pulled us aside, and we found the common ground. And then I know he has to do that all the time, usually within his own caucus, but sometimes, you know, in a bipartisan way too. And that's also a skillful leader and explains why you have survived as long as you have in your position. I think the true measure of a leader is not how you deal with the majority, it's how you deal with those that don't have a voice, how you deal with the minority, those that don't have a seat at the table. And for that, you've always been fair. It's been a pleasure working with you the last 3 years as co-leaders. Certainly, you're the majority, and you know I'm begging and getting some of the crumbs off the table periodically. But we shall miss you. It's been great working with you. Thank you for your passion that you have delivered so effectively in leading the Senate.
And now, Democratic Party Leader Senator Corbett would like to deliver her tribute.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And before I start my remarks, I just felt it was important to say this, to hear the words of our pro tem to be and our current pro tem. I just want to compliment them both. I have never seen in my entire history here as a member or a staffer such an amazing transition in the House. And I want to compliment you both. It has made this an amazing and wonderful year and an exceptionally wonderful end to this session. So thank you both. So, Senator Steinberg, it's such an honor and privilege to be able to speak about you, and I hope I can just sort of keep it together. You're an amazing public servant that embodies the heart and soul of this state. Your legacy will live long beyond your time here, and we all know that. And from day one, you have been a fighter. Many have already spoke about this, but I just have to just say it again. You always fight for what's right. You always make sure those that do not have a voice have a voice. And you always make sure those that don't have a seat at the table have a seat at that table. And you have a very clear eye to see what's right. And it is very difficult so many times here to see through all that mud to see what is right. So I want to thank you for that. Many people have talked about your fight, your commitment to people who are dealing with mental health challenges. And obviously, your work on Proposition 63 continues to serve the lives of so many in this state and will into the future. You have created networks and support for families that at times felt no one was listening and no one cared. And as you know, it was many years that we had not really looked as closely and supported these services in the way we had. So you've made such a huge change. And when it comes to mental health services, members, I want to tell you, when I'm in my district and I'm meeting with families who are dealing with these challenges, they know who Darrell Steinberg is. And if you mention Darrell Steinberg's name, they smile. And that is such a great tribute to Darrell. You've made such a difference. And from the time you were a city council member, you've never given up that fight. You've always wanted to be a leader. And during the height of the budget crisis, you were the leader. And you wanted to be the leader. That's even more remarkable. And you stepped up. And you stepped up with some other very courageous colleagues as well. And we all know, we've all talked about it, many of us have lived through it. Those were the most difficult and darkest days. We had to make the most bone-breaking decisions and choices. People were in tears, but you led us through that. And you rightfully deserve the honor that you received, along with the colleagues, the Profile and Courage Award. And I think it is so appropriate and amazing that that award, many of you have seen it, it's a lantern. And Darrell's that lantern. He has led us through that darkness because of his unique skills, his sense of humor, his ability to negotiate and to not give up. And we're back on track now, thanks to that work and that foundation back then. And of course, again, this year, Darrell, again, used his amazing negotiating skills, his sense of humor. And again, of course, we had a balanced budget on time. And the sun is finally shining through those storm clouds. We can say we're back. Darrell, I also, personally, I will remain forever grateful for the opportunity to serve as your majority leader. And most importantly, not only did I get to work very closely with you to serve our constituents and help people from all over the state, but I got a chance to learn from you. I got to learn about quiet perseverance and patience and making very difficult choices with grace. And Darrell, that's you. I'm also very grateful I had the opportunity to travel with you to Central America and get to know you even a little better and hear a few more of those jokes. And of course, I got to travel with Ari also. Ari is a fine young man. And Ari, I was really grateful getting to know you too. And obviously your dad and your mom and your grandparents have done a very good job of raising you and Jordana. Thank you for sharing your father with us. But in Central America, Senator DeLeon spoke about this too. Darrell didn't give up on his tenacity to do what was right or his unyielding concern for people. He loves people all over the world, not just in California. And those tributes shone through during that trip. He led the delegation. He led a discussion. It was a little difficult at times because we were pushing, because we wanted to make sure that we could do whatever we could to make sure that the people in El Salvador would have the benefit of a U.S. aid package. And in a very real way, those discussions did lead to the unlocking of the $277 million aid package. And Daryl, I just want to thank you for that as well. It was really, really an amazing opportunity to show your skills. And I have a little present for you, but I think first I'd like to make these part of my comments. I would be very remiss to say, and I know all of us feel this way, we are also very grateful that you have served during this time, that you have given up time with your amazing and wonderful family. And we want to thank your wife and your children and your parents for allowing you to spend that time with us on behalf of the state of California. Thank you to you and your part in all of this. So I have a little gift. And I hope you don't mind that I opened it because I want to share a few words from this book. This is the Pretty Good Joke book. It's only the Pretty Good Joke book because, of course, he has the best jokes. And I wanted to read a few jokes because those of you who have heard about Daryl's jokes, some of you have heard Daryl's jokes, some of you have just heard us talk about Daryl's jokes. There's a few jokes in this book that I thought I would read just to give you all an opportunity to understand what types of jokes our fearless leader tells us. So Daryl, did you hear about the silkworms in a race? The two silkworms in a race? No. They wound up in a tie. Do you know how the man in the moon cuts his hair? Eclipse it. And Daryl, this one, I know you could tell this one. Is there another word for synonym? And this one doesn't apply to you, but I think this one's pretty cute too. I always wanted to be somebody, but I guess I should have been more specific. And the last two jokes I will tell before I hand this book over to you. So, let's see. One is about Democrats and one is about Republicans because we must be fair. How many Democrats does it take to change a light bulb? Anybody know? 17. 1 to change the bulb, 6 to talk about how wonderful it's going to be when the new bulb is screwed in, and 10 to argue for increased funding for solar lighting research. And how many Republicans does it take to change a light bulb? 82. 12 to investigate the administration's involvement in the failure of the old bulb. 23 to deregulate the light bulb industry. And 51 to come up with some amendments to the new bill and to pass a tax credit for light bulb changes. All right, Daryl, I hand this over to you. I know you will use it very well.
And next, Senator Padilla would like to deliver his tribute.
Thank you, Madam President. On that note, horse walks into the bar. Bartender says, "Why the long face?" You told me that a couple years ago. But now I have an answer. Why the long face? Because this is Daryl's last year in the legislature. Wanted to stand up today and pay tribute to my friend. I say friend when I could have said colleague. You know, as Daryl began to touch on in the tribute to me not too long ago, when we first got here, when we both first arrived in the Senate, there was, I wouldn't call it tension, I would say a little competitiveness going on because we both arrived under the tenure of President Pro Tem Parada. And there was speculation about who would take Parada's place when the time came and who might be interested in this and that. And as history would have it and should have had it, Daryl became our leader for the last 6 years. And we quickly got past that tension, I believe, starting at a lunch at the Riverside Cafe in his community here, right in Sacramento. And from there spawned our friendship. I don't say colleague despite the great policy work that we've done together, that we've learned from each other, and frankly, that you've inspired me to try to raise my game on policy, whether it was education, whether it's mental health, whether it's the committee you entrusted in me, the Energy, Utilities and Communications Committee, and all the work that we've done together. And also being colleagues in the Democratic caucus when it comes to the political side of the business that we do. But I didn't say colleague. I didn't say as one of the members of your caucus, even though you have been my leader in our caucus and my leader here in the Senate. I touched on it, in the previous tribute, but I'll emphasize it here today. You were the right leader at the right time for this body and for this state. I can't, with all due respect to everybody else, I can't imagine anybody else who have guided us through the Great Recession better than you did. It was tough. I know it was tough. I know how it wore on me. I know how it wore on all of us. I can only imagine how it wore on you. But to be able to lead the negotiations with Republican leaders, with assembly leaders, with multiple governors, and make the budget choices we had to make with compassion, our survival of the Great Recession and our repositioning as a state, not just as a national leader, but as a global leader, is tremendously due to your leadership. Tough choices with compassion. And I want to thank, as a Californian, I thank you for that. You know, when you first became pro tem, there was a lot of talk about, well, is he up for the job? You know, Daryl's style, he's very wonky. He's all about policy. Does he have the political chops? And the worst thing people said about him was, he's a nice guy. Is he too nice of a guy? Well, colleagues, just look at the results. We survived the Great Recession. I'm not sorry, Huff, but our numbers increased in this House. They didn't decrease in this House. Clearly, Daryl's got the political chops. But if you look at the policy accolades that have been pointed out by Senator Leno, by the governor, and by others of the time of this Senate, the accomplishments of this Senate under the Steinberg era, it will stand among the tallest of any pro tem's leadership in the history of California. Friend, you should be very, very proud of that. He did it his way, but he did it. And I end with why I say I'm paying tribute to my friend, because despite that competitiveness when we first arrived, we became seatmates. We compared family stories and family pictures every Monday coming off the weekend. We elbowed each other about Dodgers and Giants. And yes, you have 2 more World Series to brag about than I do over the last, but we're 5 up, and I'm looking forward to magic number pretty soon. And you honored my wife and I when you agreed to come and attend and speak at our wedding. I'm going to miss you, but today I just want to say thank you.
Senator Cannella.
Thank you, Madam President. It's a great honor to stand up today to recognize Daryl Steinberg. I was walking into the office this morning. I was thinking about the state of California and what we've gone through. I was a local official during the beginning of the Great Recession and the cuts we had to make. I thought it's a little unfair, really. I mean, here's Daryl Steinberg, obviously has grand visions for the state of California, and he served at a time when we had to make massive cuts to programs that we all care about, especially Senator Steinberg. I thought it's a little unfair that when things are finally starting to get better, we're starting to see a brighter day ahead, that's the time that the pro tem has to go out. But I thought, you know what, things happen for a reason, really. I mean, I think all things happen for a reason, and Darrell was put in this position to lead during very difficult times, because I'll tell you, it's very easy to lead during good times. When the wind is at our back and there's money all over the place, really anybody can do it. It takes a special person to lead when the opposite is true, especially for someone like Darrell, who's so caring, cares so much about everybody in the state of California, to make those very difficult cuts to programs that he very much believes in, but he did it, and he did it with grace, and he did it with compassion, and we were able to keep things going in the state of California, and that's a real tribute to you. You're a very good leader. It was mentioned earlier that Darrell never loses. He doesn't. This is my 4th year in the Senate. When I first got here, we'd have bills that I didn't think were very good, and they would be stuck, 18, 17, 19, whatever, and I thought, you know what, we're gonna win today. And then Darrell would get up, and he'd get that look on his face and kind of push his sleeves up a little bit, and he would get his votes. He always gets his votes, and that's, again, I think that's a tribute to you and who you are and what you do. And, you know, you are a nice guy. I mean, everybody I talk to thinks you're a nice guy, but as Senator Padilla mentioned, you can be political too. And I think a lot of people in this chamber will say that you know, getting the 2/3 in the Senate was a big accomplishment. I think it was horrible, for the record, but I think a lot of people agree with it. And it turns out it hasn't happened very many times. Per my notes, it happened in 1883 and 1965. So you've been able to do something that not many others have been able to accomplish, and then you do it again with a smile on your face and as a decent human being. And the other thing that I've really appreciated about you, and I talk about this all the time, I know we're a political machine. That's part of what we do. But it doesn't always have to be political. And I think that's what you've done since I've been here. You can be political when it's time to be political, and I think that's a very narrow amount of time. And most of the time, it's all about policy with you. And I think you do things that maybe aren't in your political best interest. For example, when I was elected, now you did not encourage me to run for the Senate, for the record, but I was elected, and you made me the chair of agriculture. And that was really probably against political wisdom, but you did what you think was right or thought was right, and I really appreciate it. And I think it shows who you are as a human being. And you're just a good man. I mean, you're a person that will talk to anybody. If someone has a problem, your door is open, and you listen to people. You're a great listener. And you really make every effort to help. And so, you know, Senator De Leon, you have big shoes to fill. You really do. Darrell has been great for California. You're a great human being, and I'm sorry you're going to leave. I wish you were able to be here over the next 4 years when things are better. So thank you for your service.
Senator Correa.
Thank you, Madam President. Darrell, my friend, we came together in 1999, and now in a few days, we're leaving. I can only say it's been a great honor to serve with you. Over those 14 years we've served together, I've watched you grow, become a great leader in the state of California. A couple of years there when we first got here, we presided over the time of plenty, right before the dot-com bust. And the fights then were how to invest those surplus revenues in the state of California. And I'm sorry to say that, unfortunately, we've also presided over some very, very difficult times in the state of California. I'm going to repeat it again. My seatmate, my colleague from San Francisco said that those days of 2009 are going to fade into the memories of many people, but I will tell you, I'm one person that will never forget those difficult days that you presided over, because I remember waking up every morning, every night, thinking, when is this nightmare going to be over? It didn't matter what we did in those days. Didn't matter what solution we implemented. Somebody was going to be pissed off. Friends, none at all. And then we made those decisions. Can't think of any careers that really took off, but I can think of many that were put in peril. Very dark days, the state of California. Like many of you have already said here today, it took a real leader, person that was a policy wonk, so to speak, to get us through those very difficult, hard times. I want to thank you, Darrell, because we made some very difficult decisions together in those very dark days. And I will never forget the pain, because a lot of people in the state of California felt the shocks of the decisions that we made, that we had to make because of that major financial meltdown. And just now, like was just said, when things are getting good, we got to go. You're an intellect, my friend, a great thinker. And right before your tribute started, I walked over to Julie and I said, "What are you going to do with Darrell now at home?" She said, "That ain't going to happen. I've never known Darrell to be at home." And I think she made a good point, which is, for all the great things you've done in the state of California, that's meant that you've taken time away from your family. And I consider myself a family person, very close to my kids. And I can only begin to think of the sacrifices you've had to make to be the leader that the state of California has needed you to be in the very difficult and dark days. Thank you, Julie, for the sacrifices. Thank you to your family for letting them serve the state of California. Y mi hermano, muchas gracias por todo. Seré tu amigo hoy y mañana. I'm your friend today, and I'll be your friend tomorrow. Thank you very much, Darrell.
Senator Gaines.
Thank you, Madam President and members. It's an honor to have a moment to recognize Darrell and the great things that he's done as our leader. And I'll never forget the dinner that we had when I was in the Assembly with you and Julie and Beth and myself. And it seems like our relationship has just built up over time and in very good ways. And it reminds me of some of the votes that we've taken here on the floor in terms of autism, to make sure that children had the opportunity to receive services at an early age, so that it could hopefully have an impact on that child's adult life. And research is showing that, and the great work that's being done at the Mind Institute that you helped found, Darrell. And just want to make sure that we remind ourselves of the great things that you've done in mental health. And it's not just the passage of Prop 63, which I voted against, because I always figured we could find revenue somewhere in that state budget. But certainly the priority of mental health has been a key aspect of your entire career. And I just appreciate what you've done for Californians in the arena of mental health. And it's been transforming for Californians. And then, of course, I'll never forget the trip we took to Canada last year. And while I was meeting to find out about how reg reform was successful in British Columbia, you were learning more about the carbon tax. And I'll never forget the joke that you cracked, because it was Ken Cooley, myself, and Darrell that went on the trip. And as we were boarding the plane, he goes, "So you have a liberal, a conservative, and a moderate, and they go into a bar." And then, of course, I couldn't help but see that your belt, and I think this speaks to your humility, but I don't know if anybody recognized the belt that Darrell was wearing. It must have been for years and years and years, because the thing was really worn out, and it was all hashed up, and it didn't have any gloss on the front. I go, you know what, I got to get that guy a new belt. And so I presented that to you on the Senate floor, in recognizing the tough times that we've been through, and belt tightening in California, and that the belt was reversible, left or right. I'm hoping I can swing you to the right on some issues. And of course, the opportunities that we had with the Sacramento Kings, and working with Mayor Johnson in retaining the Kings in Sacramento, the team, the arena. It's been so exciting, and what a great opportunity for the region to have that new arena, what will probably be a new mall, which will draw people from all over the region, the creation of jobs. And then, of course, the opportunity with Tesla. And there's still 72 hours, Daryl. I think a deal can come together. Have we heard from the governor's office? But wouldn't that be cool if we could create, or at least have an influence on 6,500 jobs coming to California and a $5 billion investment. So never say die, and we'll keep fighting the fight. And I wish you just the best in your future, and because of your impact and the impact of our legislature and our governor, I think California's future is very bright. Thank you. God bless.
Senator Nielsen.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, and Senator Steinberg, when one assumes what I call that splendid loneliness of leadership responsibility, in a partisan house, the most important lesson first to understand and come to terms with is you are not simply the leader of the partisan party. You're the leader, and you exemplify, and you're the face of the entire institution, and your responsibility is therefore to that institution. Some have learned that better than others, but knowing many of them, I would put you to the top of the list of one who understood that responsibility. To the institution, those who served there not just during your tenure, but who had previously served there, and to set an example for those who would succeed you in that legislature. You have done that, Daryl, with commendable ability and authority, and acceptance of responsibility, and I know a price that is paid. I've seen your frustration. I understand it. I've even seen the fire in your eyes once in a while when your dander gets up. And you know, that's a good thing in a leader, but you have to handle and control that. You've been able to do it. The impact on the institution is great, but the impact on the people of the state of California also is a significant thing, and it's noteworthy for you and your years of leadership. As you look back and as you look ahead, what your legacy will be. Two of the accomplishments that Governor Brown acknowledged speaking a couple of days ago when the President of Mexico came here, the hallmarks of his tenure as governor of the state of California will be the rainy day fund and the water bond. Now, I think obviously the budget is another huge thing, but that rainy day fund, Senator Steinberg and ladies and gentlemen of California, is huge. Because for the first time in decades, we're really going to be able to get a bit of a handle on that budget. And that was a courageous stand for you to take. I appreciate that courage. I appreciate what the legacy will mean. And surely I do in terms of the water bond. It was my privilege to be one of the negotiators working with you in the conference committee in 2009 on what became the first major policy change in water history in California that was as significant as the original Governor Brown 1 water plan, Pat Brown's water plan. That was huge. And a bond was attendant to that one that we've now succeeded with a very significant one that is before us now. Obviously, I attest to your love and dedication, passion for mental health. And for my own professional duties in life, I see the ravages of what having those difficulties from the womb can mean to individuals who get into our criminal justice system. Your legacy there, my friend, will also be enduring and long-lasting. Daryl, you have handled that splendid loneliness of leadership with aplomb, with dignity, with respect. You deserve all the accolades that you're getting here today. As one of the Senate, I thank you, Daryl Steinberg, for what you have done for the California State Senate in your tenure. God love you, my friend.
Senator Block.
Well, Darrell, I'll be very brief. I happened to have dinner earlier this week with a good friend of yours, Richie Ross, a friend of both of ours. And Richie, occasionally when I need to seek wisdom, I'll go and see Richie. And we talked about aging, since we all are a bit. And he quoted Willie Brown. He said to me, you know, when I first got into Willie's office in the assembly, he said, we talked about aging, and he said to me, Ross, you're really not old until your memories are more exciting than your dreams. That was really pretty profound. It's a great Richie moment. And it just seems so apropos today. I wasn't going to speak, but we've talked so much about what you've done, about your incredible accomplishments, about the exciting memories you must have from an amazing career. But with you, I know it's the dreams that really keep you going. And while I pay tribute to you for everything you've done, I congratulate you in advance for the incredible future you still have ahead of you with your wonderful family. I can't wait to see the next step for Darrell Steinberg.
Senator Weiland.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, Darrell, you and I have known each other for 14 years. And you may not recall this, but when I was first in the Assembly, I actually met you in the elevator. And I'd come up here, I was very idealistic and interested in education. And I thought this was a body where we would look at visions and maybe have somewhat different views, which we do, but really drill down. Well, that's not all that we do, as I found out. But when I saw you there, I knew that you headed a select committee on dropouts. And I didn't know that select committees really don't meet all that often. Yours did. And I asked you, I said, Darrell, I'm pleased to meet you. I'd like to attend, be a part of this committee if I can. You were very welcoming. And I still remember one of those first meetings. And it wasn't a long formal hearing with testimony that we all knew what it was going to be. It was about real people on the ground in a poor rural community and how they had dealt with the challenge, lots of English learners, which was very similar to the experience I had had in Escondido, and how they had solved that problem. And I was very impressed, and I thought that's sort of what we did. Well, there are lots of other elements to it, and fast forward to the Senate. And I saw again in the Senate something that typifies you, which is not common. The governor talked about the vision, and then he said, visions, more than I have. Well, as kind of a vision guy, I think that's really important. I don't think you can do good public policy without that. And we may sometimes have different ideas of how to get there. The actual visions aren't that different. So I thought, well, now he's the pro tem, and he's got a lot to do. You know, he's going to be involved in that stuff. Son of a gun. Here you come up with more bills and more policy and more visions. It became, in the Education Committee, I thought, well, what's he going to come up with this year? And you never shrank, even with all those other duties, from working on the policies that will make a difference. One, as you know, that's very dear to my heart because it's directly tied to the dropout rate, career technical, we used to call it vocational education. You know, I had never gone on any trip for a variety of reasons until I saw that trip last year to Germany and Switzerland about vocational education apprenticeships. And I didn't really know what it would be. I thought, well, I'd like to go back there. And it turned out to be a trip truly focused on what can we learn from them that we can apply here to solve real problems we have. And you led that trip very, very well in all sorts of ways. You even managed to restrain me when my questioning and curiosity just wouldn't end. You know, Mark, it's time to go. We have another appointment. And we can laugh about that, but I feel a kinship there, because I think that intensity and caring and focus about actual, real solutions, and the ways of getting there may be different, is really critical to the future of this state and our country. The vision thing. I think it typifies you, and I started thinking, how could I really characterize this? It's the passion, it's the idealism, and then I thought about your comments about me last week, and I thought, you know, it's not just the romantic Democrat, it's the romantic, idealistic, visionary Democrat. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that. I believe that we will, in fact, work together on those issues in the future. And I think that is what can transform this state. Not just exercise of power, but actually doing the hard work to change this state for the better. I appreciate that deeply.
Senator Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Madam President, members. Let me first start off by thanking Julie for letting Darrell do this. All of us know the sacrifices on our families for us being up here. Yours and your families have only been magnified because your husband happened to be leader of the Senate. And we've heard today about Darrell's tremendous accomplishments. What I want to talk about is why it's so much more remarkable given the nature of his position. Having served in the Assembly and in the Senate, the two houses are different. Our cultures are different. We tend to be older and slower here in the Senate. And I remember in the Assembly, when you didn't want to vote for a bill, the Speaker would call you in, and after you protested, you always ended up by saying either yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. And there's a term for that. It's called when a bill has been speakerized. Here in the Senate, there's no such term as a bill that's been pro-temerized. And that's because when the pro tem here comes up and wants you to do something, you generally say, thank you, I'll look into it. It's just a different culture. And then the pro tem would have to convince you, either because of policy or because of some good issue for the caucus, or because you didn't want to let Darrell down. But he also respected when you disagreed with him, and he knew we represented different constituencies. We have different needs. Our voters have different views, and not all senators have the same districts. And when you didn't agree, he was okay with that too. But in his 6 years of being pro tem, he's never lost a vote on a significant issue. And that is remarkable. And because of that, the lives of Californians are better because of your service. And from a grateful state, we all just want to say thank you.
Senator Anderson.
Don't hide behind those extremist views. So, you know, I have a unique perspective, being the bad boy in the Senate. Well, not the guilty boy, but the bad boy. So I concur with every one of my fellow senators. They've spoken eloquently and to so many of your accomplishments. But there are two things that are unique to me. The first is when I became a freshman legislator in the Assembly, I fell into a bill that turned out to be a huge bill. We were the first state in the nation to divest our public pensions from Iran, $24 billion. And I thought long and hard, and I was looking for people to help and assist me with that. And I knew that Darrell had a track record of standing up strong against genocide, standing up for human rights and other issues. And I approached him to manage the bill on the Senate side. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. Here I am, a freshman legislator, 3 weeks on the job, and I stumble into something that's bigger than me, bigger than my career will ever be. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it, and that has always influenced the way I viewed our relationship. Because you didn't have to reach out, you didn't have to do it, and there were plenty of people in this dome, including the governor, at the time who wanted to kill the bill. It would have been so easy for you to step on a freshman Republican in the assembly, and yet that's not the tack you took. You went ahead and reached out and assisted me on that, and I'm deeply appreciative. But more importantly, I think we're a better country because we did it. 28 states followed suit. So having said that, I want to shift gears to the more current. And that is, we have had some great debates on the floor. Many times you've been right. And I'd like to say that the one thing that was reassuring, that I think that if I were to pick one item that I think is your greatest character, and that is every day is a new day. I don't ever feel like, no matter how heated, even when you didn't feel like you wanted to shake my hand, when I offered it, you always never held a grudge. You always came back the next day as a fresh day, and we worked on the next project together. And for that, I'm grateful. I think there are very few people that have the power of the office of pro tem or speaker, that power doesn't go to their head, and they abuse it in some minor way. And all through the process, over the last 4 years, when I've amended bills and I've pushed you to your limits, I've always felt that every day was a new day, and you never, ever held a grudge. And I can't say that of many people. But Darrell, I'm going to miss you. I tweeted out a little picture of us together. And in the tweet, I said, I'm going to miss you, bro. So thank you.
Senator Lara.
Thank you, Madam President, members. I rise as chair of the California Latino Legislative Caucus, and it is my pleasure to join my colleagues in celebrating the work of our great pro tem. And Darrell, excuse me for reading. I want to make sure I get this right, and I don't want to screw this up. Over these 2 years I've had the privilege of serving as chair, no one has been a bigger friend to or a supporter of the caucus than you, Darrell. His keen legislative skills and political mastery are well known, but what really moves me, especially upon my arrival to the Senate, was your empathy and your compassion. You can tell a lot about a person, and particularly a public servant, or some people call us politicians, when they espouse their views without a reporter or a television camera present. And Darrell's commitment has always been there for the downtrodden, the forgotten, and those without a voice, particularly the Latino community and its undocumented family members. So when it came to stand up for those who received only scorn, intolerance, and ridicule from Washington to Murrieta and beyond, he rolled up his sleeves and helped us bring needed reforms to California. Without him, we could not have attained some of our signature legislative victories. He played a particularly prominent role in the passage of last year's AB 60. And what a lot of members don't know is that without Darrell's leadership, we would not have driver's license for undocumented Californians today. When we had no idea what we were going to do and how the Assembly was going to react to this bill that we were going to send back to them, regardless of the fact that they did not particularly want this bill, the 7 Latino caucus members went to Darrell, and Darrell said, we have to do this because this is the right thing to do. And that is what Darrell is all about. Darrell, his role was also imperative to the success of AB 1024, last year's bill to allow those who were undocumented but qualified to be a member of the state bar. This opened the door for other states to consider this move, and it emboldened me to seek and provide other accomplished but undocumented members of our community access to other professional licenses. Most recently, he helped shepherd the critical funding proposal that will provide over $3 million for aid for these unaccompanied minors, children refugees, the first state to actually do something proactive for these children that are in critical need of our support. Again, this speaks volumes about the commitment to those who have nothing but a desire to attain the American dream, and you've always understood that, Darrell. As we like to call you, as an honorary member of the Latino Caucus, he has stood with us during some of the most important times in our history, when everyone in this building couldn't resist to cast judgment to an entire group. Darrell was never quick to judge and was quick to disabuse anyone, particularly the media, in particular your hometown newspaper, who was very quick to stereotype an entire group of individuals without any reason, any rhyme or reason. Case in point, he defended our caucus when it was under attack by the media and others in this building. He recognized that we were a caucus of 24 and not a caucus of 1, and that our body of collective work over the last 40 years should not be dismissed because of one member's transgressions. I cannot close without mentioning his immense contributions to the growth of our caucus. He fought for our candidates and continues to fight for our candidates, and because of his unwavering support, we gave him a boxer's robe, and as you know, in the Latino community, boxing is very important. And emblazoned behind it, we gave him a nickname, Darrell El Matador Steinberg. Members, I cannot overstate the gratefulness to Senator Steinberg, and I wish all the best in his post-Senate endeavors. Many of you who know my father know he's a man of a few words. And when I talked to him about that great accomplishment that we were able to get AB 60. My dad, we were driving on our way to pick up my mom, just told me, ese Darrell si nos quiere. Darrell es un buen hombre. That Darrell really likes us. He's a good man. You have been a true friend to the Latino community in the state, and I'm proud to call you my friend and my compadre. Thank you, Darrell.
Speaker Emeritus Perez, would you like to come to the front and give a tribute at this time? And sergeants, can you make sure that the newsroom knows that we can hear voices coming out of the newsroom? Come on up.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. I just really wanted to come and thank the Pro Tem for his amazing leadership of this institution and his amazing partnership over the last several years. He assumed the mantle of Pro Tem of the Assembly during the worst moment of the economic crisis the state was confronted, and he's now dealt with it with 3 successive speakers. First, with my predecessor, Karen Bass, when they were confronted with moments where the state of California came within days of insolvency, not once, but 3 times. And his leadership and hers and their partnership with Republican leaders and the governor of both houses really allowed for the state of California to figure out a way to right our ship of state. And then for just over 4 years with me. Darrell and I, it's no secret, have very different styles. Well, I have style. Darrell, if you look to page 20 of your joke book, there may be a retort for you. We had very different approaches that really spoke to what makes our democracy work. The ability of people to come together from different points of views, from different tactical approaches to figure out how we advance the interests of the people that we're so privileged to serve. And Darrell has been masterful at listening to the members of the Senate in both parties, but in particular of running the Democratic caucus in this House, to figure out how to bring people together in these times of crisis. And we're now starting to see the results of the hard work that we've all done significantly under Darrell's leadership. The state is recovering at a faster clip than the nation. Our rate of recovery is 2% compared to the 1.5% of the nation as a whole, creating more jobs than virtually every other state in the country, but making sure that we're mindful of creating them in a way that creates the greatest set of opportunities for the people of our state. Making California, which was once the laughingstock, which was once subject to comparisons to the government of Greece, now the place that is leading the way for showing how one deals with crisis and recovery. And it has been an incredible honor, Darrell, to have worked with you not only on these broad-based economic issues, but working with you on so many of the crucial issues of the day. Your work as we figured out how to create meaningful compromises in workers' compensation reform that would save employers hundreds of millions of dollars, help injured workers get back to work more quickly, and help those whose injuries were so grave that they could never return to work have adequate levels of benefits to provide for themselves and their families. Your work to make sure that we pass not only one, but two water bonds, one that's actually going to get passed by the people of the state of California, because everybody in both chambers came together to find the meaningful solutions to one of the most vexing challenges for the long-term interest of the state of California. Your work on expanding opportunity for young people and making sure that we make appropriate investments in early education, making sure that we restore some of the most devastating cuts to the social safety net. Your groundbreaking work on one of the least talked about but most important issues, not only here in California but across the country, and that is our need to restructure the way that we deal with mental health challenges confronting so many people, and deal with stigma so that we can get past the stigma and get to real treatment. As I walked in and heard Senator Lara talking about your role in making sure that we've made California the example of a humane and inclusive approach to diversity and to expanding rights of immigrants in the state, the role that this chamber has played in leading the efforts to expand equality for all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. These are the things that people look to from California. And your years as pro tem have been a great example of what we can do when we roll up our sleeves and work together. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your partnership. The institution and the state of California are better served and are better off because of your service. Thank you.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't going to speak, but since everybody else has, oh, what the heck. Just a few comments. Darrell and I started together back in 1998 when he had hair, and mine was a little darker color. And I found Darrell immediately to be, and continue to be, a true mensch. A true mensch. Now, this is a word that's used often and rather liberally, but not necessarily accurately. Darrell, when I first met him, I thought he had missed his calling and he should be a rabbi. But I discovered that's what his brother is, and who wants two rabbis in the same family? So when Darrell wanted to become the speaker, I told him he was too nice to want that job, and I won't say he didn't try, but then, after I left the legislature, he became the president of the Senate, so obviously he wasn't paying any attention to me. And yet, now that I'm back, I can say that Darrell is still a mensch. And I think that that is what many of us here today have been talking about. And so I have a definition here for those of you who don't know Yiddish. A mensch is a person of integrity and honor, someone to admire and emulate, someone of noble character. This is a heavy burden to truly qualify as a mensch. Darrell was always a mensch, but as President Pro Tem of the Senate, he has continued to be. This is an ultimate challenge, because one can get caught in the trappings of being not only a senator, but being the head of the Senate. And yet, I have never seen this happen with Darrell. He continues to be a man of great humility, of great integrity, of great character. He doesn't forget his roots, and I'm sure that when he goes home at night, he's reminded of them, as he should be. And he has been a leader who has led in that fashion, never heavy-handed, never thinking he was better than any of the rest of us. We have been together, comrades, partners, equals. And I can't think of a time where I've seen Darrell exercise meanness. There's not a mean bone in this man's body. I think that's why there can be discussions with our dear friend Senator Anderson, who can occasionally rattle one's good humor and patience. And yet, there is no vindictiveness. There's no effort to try to do anything to gain revenge or an upper hand, because Darrell's not capable of that. And I think all of the wonderful accomplishments that have been recited about your tenure are a credit to the fact that it is truly possible to do good and to be a good person throughout every bit of it. And you are a man who has been here always about the policy, always about tikkun olam, to heal the earth. I think this is an extraordinary record, and I did want to also be included and stand up to thank you for your leadership and your guidance and your menschness.
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Well, El Matador, everything clearly has already been said, twice actually. But I would be remiss if I didn't, as a former Senate staffer, long-term staffer, acknowledge for you, if you haven't been able to see throughout today's tribute, the fact that the back of the chamber has been filled with both long-term and newer Senate staffers who have come to clearly express their desire to participate and be with you. They don't have mics, they can't raise it, so I wanted to acknowledge their presence on their behalf for you. As well as the gallery. I saw Rusty Seelix and a number of advocates in the gallery. Clearly, their participation today, their desire to be here in the room speaks volumes to what you've meant for them, their advocacy, their employment. So I wanted to raise that one issue that hasn't been mentioned today. Congratulations.
Senator Wayso.
Thank you. I felt compelled to rise because almost everything has been said. And I wanted to share a personal experience of mine that I think really speaks to our pro tem's commitment to public service, to a commitment that I think that has far exceeded others' commitment to public service, in my view. Everyone knows Darrell as a very tough negotiator, very bright, very talented mind. And when I first arrived, we were going over enterprise zone modifications, and we were doing this reform bill. And of course, Darrell waited to the right moment to engage our office and start talking about how, we needed to do this, and he was very convincing. But I also felt compelled to share the challenges facing the people of my district. I have a very diverse district, one that has the city of San Diego, it's a tourist destination, a very visited place, currently with low unemployment rates, 6% unemployment. At the time we were talking about this, they were much higher, but relatively low. And the county of Imperial and Riverside, in particular, Imperial has unemployment rates that are about 28%. And at the time, I was talking about how more needed to be done to effectively reduce unemployment in Imperial. And he felt, he accepted an invitation to come and visit the county. Now, he kept his word and came. But in the process, I had asked a local historian, I had asked other elected officials, I had asked people that had lived their entire lives in that district, and asked them when, as they could recall or as they could dig up information, when was the last time a pro tem had visited Imperial County, and nobody could ever recall the time. And that was amazing that he took the time to go down there, but in addition to that, he really dug himself into meeting the people and understanding the issues. And in that one visit, when he walked away, his visit meant so much to that district in helping to provide resources for the children that did not have a swimming pool, and helping to evolve a policy that will attract jobs to the county, and helping the state to support policies that were going to help a very, very disadvantaged community out there that I have in my district. And everything that I've done here that has involved that community has been met with very staunch support on behalf of the pro tem, and I appreciate that very much. So I wanted to rise to thank you for your commitment to our state, but to my community as well, that has a very high regard for you and is very grateful, not only for your visit, but following up and supporting investments in that community that are going to change people's lives for many years to come. And that is going to be part of your legacy. And I will never forget, and I will always be grateful for everything that I've learned from you, but in particular for your very sincere support for all of the people of the state wanting to make their lives a better place. Thank you.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Senator Steinberg, would you like to address us from the last time from the podium here?
I'd like to address us right here.
Right, we're going to
be among my colleagues. Thank you. At my desk. Madam President and colleagues, I guess I now know what it feels like to have an out-of-body experience. And am overwhelmed and am grateful for all of your kind words. And frankly, I'm a little apologetic that it's taken 2 hours and that we have business to do. And I know we all have a lot to do, and you have busy schedules. And Alex kept saying to me, take it in, it's okay, enjoy it. And I suppose after 6 years in this most difficult of jobs, I don't know that I deserve any of this, but I'm very grateful for it. And I'm grateful to so many people, and I hope that before I actually leave, I'll get the chance, and I will make a point to thank everybody individually, but I'm so grateful that my mom and dad are here. But for them, I wouldn't be here today. To Julie and Ari and Jordy couldn't be here today because she's in class, going to class up at Sierra College and doing her thing, but I love you very much, and Jordy, and all that's said about the sacrifice of spouses and families is absolutely true. and I love you all. Thank you. My wonderful colleagues, all who spoke, and even those who didn't speak, I can't tell you how much your friendship and your support means to me. The fact that the governor of the state of California came, and two speakers, Speaker Perez and Atkins, Senator Huff, the minority leader, everybody, friends from the assembly, and of course this unbelievable staff. And I will thank them all individually, and because I know you know where my heart is and how grateful I am for the incredible hours of public service that you all do, and Kathy Dressler and Anthony Williams and my entire, Susan McKee and my entire team and my political team and all of you. Some of you I've worked with for 14 years, and Sue Finn, 22 years, Sue Finn. I just am overwhelmed. And to Kevin, who's coming in, I wish you nothing but the best. And know that you're going to elevate this, and you're going to take it, as I said many times, to the next level. And you have so many gifts, and I just am so grateful that you're willing to take it on. It's, in thinking about what I want to say, I just want to make a few comments. I want to say that it is not usually for us to write about the truth of our time of service. But when someone asked one of my favorite leaders, Winston Churchill, why he was so confident that history would treat him well, he replied, "Because I intend to write it." Now, I may not write it, but I do know this. I'm incredibly lucky. During those terrible budgets of 09, 10, 11, and even up to 2012, and certainly with some of the challenges that we have had this year, people would always come up to me in the grocery store, out in the community, and sometimes even around the Capitol with this sad look, like I was the unluckiest person in the world, and say things to me like, "Oh, you must be having a terrible time. Oh, I'm so sorry." Or, you know, people sometimes be real honest, said, "Yeah, your timing really sucked here in taking this job." And somebody said it earlier, and I've kept it the entire time, that the time does not, you don't get to pick your time. Your time picks you. That's the truth. And you either do the very best you can with that time, or you shrug your shoulders and give up. But when people say that to me, I've always chuckled and assured people that I'm fine. I've been fine the entire time. And in fact, I'm incredibly grateful and lucky. I'm lucky that I was chosen to lead during difficult times. I'm lucky that I never had a boring day. I'm lucky that I got to participate in some of the most consequential decisions in modern state history. I'm lucky that I got to work with a personal and professional staff who always had my back, and political staff who always had my back and always made it fun. I'm lucky that I got to work with legislative colleagues who, with rare exceptions, who too often get noted, the vast majority of you are passionate, talented, and committed to helping people. I've been lucky to work with three talented speakers, Speaker Bass, Speaker Perez, and Speaker Atkins, and two governors and their professional teams, especially Governor Brown over the past 4 years. And most important, and it's been alluded to a lot this memorable morning, I am lucky to have been part of a 6-year run where California went from the depths of budget hell and dysfunction to fiscal stability and serial achievements. From 4 on-time balanced budgets to a bipartisan water bond and at least 100 major issues in between, California's government has gone from often mocked to proud and productive. And I must admit, there were many times when I was not sure that the turnaround would actually happen. And it happened for many reasons, including the support of the people. But one certain reason that the turnaround occurred was that this House and the other House, this House never shied from making the toughest of tough decisions, even if they were the decisions that we did not want to make or intended to make when we chose to run for office. The California turnaround, and we're not perfect, there's plenty of work left to do, but the California turnaround is part of this sometimes difficult experience that I feel best about. But it's not the only thing I feel lucky for. I feel lucky that I've had this privilege, not just over 6 years, but over 14 years, to work on issues that don't always rise to the top of the political pop charts. I know there's been a lot of talk, and I appreciate about this mental health issue. And yes, it's personal to me, but it wasn't personal when I started. And I just felt it was an issue that was not receiving sufficient attention. And the advice that a predecessor, Phil Eisenberg, gave to me, I've always remembered, and I've tried to pass it on to new legislators, which is, if you want to succeed, pick a couple things that few or no one is actually working on, and breathe life into the issue. And by the way, it shouldn't be a small issue. It should be a big issue. But the less sexy in terms of the interest of the public, maybe the more important, because you can use your fuel and your passion, your intelligence, whatever gifts you have, to try to make something good happen. So when I look at my time and I try to hold on to, we always ask this question in life, what does it all mean, right? To me, I always grab onto the numbers. And I think about nearly $2 billion this year alone in the public mental health system. I think about the thousands of kids getting insurance coverage and early behavioral therapy who are autistic. I think about the $500 million we've done together as a result of the Long Beach trip for career pathways, and how many high school students now are going to graduate and have a better experience as a result. I found out 2 days ago that 7,000 new low-income children have already signed up for quality early childhood education. The dental care deal is big to me because that, to me, that cut for 800,000 people, when I saw people in that clinic at Cal Expo getting their teeth fixed and not just having dental checkups, but having root canal operations. When I saw that, I said, this is not the California that I know and love. This needs to change. And we changed it together. I think about water. I think about this SB 375 and the permanent sources for transit and housing, and the prison overcrowding debate, and the work I've been privileged to do with farm workers and foster kids. I feel very lucky. And I've learned so much over these years, and want to end with the following advice for those who serve in office. And I know that top 10 is cliche, right? And sometimes it's funny, but I thought about 10 things that really have stayed with me and that I know much better now than I did 14 years ago or even 6 years ago. So I'd like to share them with you as sort of my closing words. Number one is obvious. No one does anything good alone. I loved the caucus meetings, and I loved the floor session, because my philosophy in terms of negotiating was always that I want my colleagues figuratively in the room with me every time I spoke on their behalf. And you know what? I can rarely recall a leak from the caucus when I shared details about budget or about anything else. And it's not everybody's style. It may not even be the right style. But I acted that way because I recognized that no one does anything good alone. Number two, in a democracy, no one should win every time, no matter how powerful they are. It's okay to say no once in a while to the people who we feel allegiance to and who we support as a matter of our values. But nobody should win every time, all the time. Number three, civility is not a weakness. You can be courteous and tough at the same time. Number four, sometimes a fight is a good and necessary thing if it's about principled differences. Fighting's not a bad thing. It's what you choose to fight about and how you choose to go about the fight. It's equally important to avoid the petty fights, as pettiness most always stands in the way of progress. Number six, losing an important bill is sometimes a necessary condition to later winning an even bigger bill. I would never have done SB 375 if I hadn't tilted at a windmill back in 2002 and suggested that we ought to share the growth in sales tax throughout California. I was on my picture was in the post office of most California cities, I think, after that thing. But it was that loss that led to the policy work. And look at the 2009 water bond. As difficult and controversial it was, I guess I won that one, but didn't really. A lot of people were unhappy, and it wasn't the right bond. But had we not done that, as we said a week ago, we might not have had the foundation to do what we did 2 weeks ago. Number seven, members should in fact fall in love with their most important bills and causes. I hate that saying, don't ever fall in love with your bills. You should fall in love with your most important bills, because without passion, this process, all that we deal with, is much less fun, and without loving what you do and the causes you pursue, you have much less chance for real success. Number eight, the public trust matters. The public will always, or usually I should say, tolerate disagreeing with you on issues so long as they trust you and have faith in how you go about making your decisions. They will tolerate disagreeing with you. Number nine, feel strongly about this one. The more power you share, the more power you gain. It's so counterintuitive in a way, but I would not have been able to survive 6 years, much less participate and help lead in achieving what we have achieved, unless you're willing to give a lot of it away and trust and empower good people to show their passion and talents and to be able to accomplish. And the irony is, the more you do that, the more people want to give you the responsibility to be able to help lead and make the tough decisions. And number 10, finally, in the end, there are only two things that matter in this business. Number one, the people you meet and grow to care for and respect, and the journey you share. And secondly, what you actually get done to improve the lives of people you may never, ever meet. The work is never done, but on both counts, I feel, and how could I not feel after today? I feel like a very lucky man. I love all of you. I love this institution. I love the state, and will be forever grateful. I do nothing else in public in my life, and I don't know what the future holds. I will have had these 14 years and certainly these last 6, and I just cannot tell you how much I thank all of you, and everyone who has helped me along the way. Thank you very much.